Hey everybody, hey YouTube, you should be here on Twitch. Everyone on Twitch is already here. They've been here forever. You had to wait hours to watch this video? What's wrong with you? Just come to Twitch. Anyway, I'm glad that you're here. What's up, Wizards? Dev, SBMTG, Like It a Magic, all that stuff. We are going to look live, baby, at some spoilers, which is good for me. That means if I screw up or something, someone in chat will tell me that I've screwed up. It's a good thing. It's actually this format. Although, a note on this format real quick. Usually I'll go to Mythic Spoiler, which has a bunch of ads. Everyone hates it. It's terrible. Or I'll go to MTG Previews, which has like 5 or 10 cards. It's really 10 cards per page. They're all tiny. You can't read them. I've gotten a lot of complaints about how I do spoiler content on Twitch once I put it on YouTube. So we're going to do something a little bit differently today. We're going to try to make sure that there's no annoying ads or the card images are big enough and you're not looking at 5 other cards while you're trying to look at the card I'm talking about. I'm going to try to solve all those problems today by doing this. Look at that. And yeah, since it's a stream, we do initial D background. So you're looking at Ikitani's car, the beautiful two-tone lime green. It's not really lime green, but God, just that S13. God, I want it so bad. I want that car. But anyway, little eye candy while we look at cards today. But I hope that this is big enough for you and there's not annoying, or I hope this is a good compromise. But we have to start somewhere. So let's look at Prosthetic Injector first. This is just 1 mana for an equipment. Equip creature gets +0/+2, has Toxic 1, and it has Equip 1. I started with this because I'm pretty sure it's a bad card. I'm pretty sure it's not very good. Honestly, like even in limited. But maybe you put it on a bigger guy and an unblockable guy. Maybe put it on unblockable guy. I'm still pretty sure it's not great. So you just need to know this card exists because it was previewed today. There's a couple of cards like that, to be honest. And this is the best thing I can say about this is that it's a 1 mana artifact and the equip cost is intensely low. This is as little as you can pay for an equipment and as little as you can pay to equip it unless you're getting down to zeros. So it does have that going for it. But even in an artifact deck that's interested in 1 mana artifacts, it doesn't work. There's better things to do. I wouldn't waste my time with it. Even in limited, I don't love this that much. But if your limited deck is like all toxic, maybe you got like 8, 12, 12 toxic guys in your limited deck, but there's like 1 guy that's not toxic, maybe. But even then, it doesn't work on like any of your guys. That's the problem with it, right? Think about this. If you have like an all toxic deck in limited, then it doesn't really do anything on most of your guys other than the toughness boost. And if you don't have an all toxic deck, then okay, I have 3 guys with toxic plus this. Am I really going to put 10 counters on my opponent? So in an all toxic deck, it sucks. In a non-toxic deck, it kind of sucks because it's like the only toxic thing. It's just not a good card. I don't say that very often, but that's just not a very good card. So let's take a look at the grossest name for a card in a set for a very long time. It's Infested Flesh Cutter. That's gross, right? This is 2 mana, 1 and a white for an equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+0. Whenever equipped creature attacks, create a 1/1 colorless Phyrexia and Might artifact creature token with Toxic 1. This creature can't block. I'm just going to start saying make a Skrelv. I'm going to start saying that. But it equips for 2 and a white, which is way too much. So, if I cast a creature on turn 1, this on turn 2, that takes my entire turn 2. Turn 3, I equip this. That takes my entire turn 3, and I equipped it to like a 1/1. And for wasting 2 turns and 5 total mana, I get a 1/1. So, again, it's not often that I say cards are just bad, but this is kind of bad. It's so not good. More gross than the Gurgler. Yeah, Gurgler just had a bad name. This has a bad name too, but it's worse. It's worse. Absolutely. So much teeth, I hate it. The set freaks me out. There's a lot of teeth in this set. It is very weird. You're correct to be weirded out by that, Granada. It's weird. But let's look next at Feed the Infection. As soon as I find it, there it is. That's the problem with this setup. Feed the Infection. It's 3 and a black for a sorcery. You draw 3 cards, you lose 3 life. Corrupted, each opponent with 3 or more poison counters loses 3 life as well. So this is harmonized. It's 4 mana for draw 3. But losing 3 life is a pretty big downside, man. I've already brought this up a couple times in this set, but your life total is a resource. You're correct to point that out. You are. But 4 mana takes your entire turn 4. Your opponent's busy playing Shieldred on their turn 4, you know, but it took your whole turn 4 to, at sorcery speed, you can't do, it's not an instant. That's one of the worst things about the card. Took your entire turn 4 at sorcery speed to not affect the board state. I mean, you get a little refill, you know, there's that. But even like a control deck that might want something like this to cast on turn 6 when it has 2 more mana available for a counter spell or removal spell, and that sounds good, right? You know, but even a deck like that, you know, you get to turn 6, do you have the 3 life? You know, like you might have 5, but that, in that case, you probably don't actually have the 3 life. But there might be a chance where you're just like, you know, screw the 3 life, I got to draw this Wrath like now. But if you do that, you probably can't cast it the same turn, you know? So, I don't know. Harmonize is not the card that it used to be, you know? Yeah, this card's not even playable with Shelly in the format. Yeah, I mean, if you have a Shelly out, you gain 6, you really gain 3 off of this. But it's on the same part of the curve as Shieldred, right? There's other 4-drops you want to play. It's just, you know, it's nowhere near, I think, playable in Standard. Even if you do have a poison deck, there's probably just way better things you should be doing in your poison deck, like playing toxic creatures, you know? I like a refill. I like a good refill, and 3 cards is a lot, but yeah, I'm not seeing this one. I think the downside is a little steep at bolting yourself, to be honest, but, you know, we all said that about the untapped lands. You remember that? The lands you have to pay 3 life, the modal lands that you pay 3 life, they come into play untapped. But those are lands. That's different. That is very, very different. So it's a 4 mana thing that takes your entire turn and you just die. So I don't love it. So let's look next at Awaken the Sleeper. Awaken the Sleeper is 4 mana, 3 and a white for a sorcery. Gain control of a creature till end of turn. Untap it. Till end of turn it gains haste. Stop me if you've heard this one. Here's where it's different. If it's equipped, you may destroy all equipments attached to it. This is kind of neat. This really is. A lot of these steal a creature for a turn spells have tended to cost 4 mana. We thought for a long time that they were just going to cost 3 mana because Threaten. Threaten is the original version of the spell. It only costs 3 mana. But it doesn't have any extra text. It turns out extra text costs you a mana. Is this extra text worth a mana? Maybe. In limited. I mean, maybe. I feel like if you get to destroy 1 equipment with this, it's probably worth it. Probably. Because these are often playable in especially sealed. Not necessarily draft. Great sideboard cards in draft. But sealed, these are often just main deck playable. Especially if you have any sort of sacrifice outlet of any kind. And this set might be thin on those. But still, if you have a way to get rid of the dude, Staff of Completion or something. Well, did you have to own the thing or control the thing? I forgot how completion is worded. But anyway, staff specifically. But altogether, shouldn't spend too long on this card. It's just like the version of this effect for this set. But I think it's a pretty good version of this effect. Not enough to see much play in Standard unless there's just a ridiculous equipment. But even then, you'll just see like a Braid and Besaiger be played in greater numbers. I don't know how much, what really needs to happen to a format in order for this to see play. There's one deck that just builds a guy with 5 equipments on it. You just wreck him with this. Like maybe, but I really don't see that happening. But these are always effects that you need to pay attention to in Limited because they're always at least somewhat playable. And in this case, you get to blow stuff up. It seems fine. So let's move on to another red card. This is Oxida Finisher. 7 mana, 5 and 2 red for a 7/5 Ogre Rebel with affinity for equipment and trample. So they couldn't be making it any more obvious. There's going to be like an equipment sub-theme in draft. I really don't know how far out of draft the equipment sub-theme is going to make it. But in Limited, you draft yourself up. And this is one of those where I think it's better for draft than sealed. You know, like you can't guarantee that you get a bunch of equipment in your sealed pool. But in draft, you can draft up as much equipment as you want. And people will probably pass it to you because it's not very good. So this guy could... He's pretty aptly named because this guy is the finisher for the equipment stack. So that's kind of neat. And then, like, obviously, if you're able to bring his casting cost down by a point or two, right, then you've got some equipment to put on him and make him even better than a 7/5 trample. So he's probably somewhat playable in Limited, but I have the same problem that I have with some other equipment-based cards. You know, like I have to spend 2 mana playing an equipment, then I have to spend my entire turn 3 playing an equipment, and then this guy costs 5. Which is, I'm still 2 mana away from, you know. I don't think he's incredible, but I think a 7/5 trampler is something you need to pay attention to in Limited. This will end games. It will. But let's move on to, this is cute because we get to talk about like a 7 mana, 7/5 guy. And then we get to talk about a 1 mana, 1/1 that I like better. This is Bilious Skull Dweller. This is just a single black mana for a 1/1 Phyrexian insect with Death Touch and Toxic 1. A 1 mana 1/1 with 2 keyword abilities that are both fine. You know, like you actually want to attack with your 1 mana 1/1 here. A lot of times you don't want to attack with 1 mana 1/1 Death Touches. You don't want to do that. But in this case, in the early game, it's going to put a poison counter or 2 on your opponent likely. They don't want to trade their 2 or 3 drop for it, right? But eventually they're going to have to trade something with it, or it's just going to do too much toxic to them. It's going to deal... this little guy could be responsible for like 4 poison counters if they just keep not blocking him. So I think this is kind of neat. Like, yeah, this is... I've seen like 5 translations of this card name too. So this is probably not it, really, but I like this guy, man. I don't think he's going to see play in Standard. Likely is not. I think the Toxic deck is green and white. It might be Abzan, but I think you're doing too much color-wise there, and you don't have a Triome to use, and it's a bad idea. 3-color decks really ought to just be like mid-range good stuff piles, and they mostly are, Grixis and stuff. If they're based on synergy, then often the mana falls apart, it doesn't work, and blah, blah. And I think the Abzan Toxic deck is a good example of why you don't want to do that. But as far as this goes in Limited, I like it. I don't usually like 1-drops in Limited, but I make special considerations for 1 mana 1/1 Death Touches in Limited. I like a Death Touch 1/1 in Limited. This is even better. It's got Toxic. Just throw Toxic on there. I like it. I like this guy. He's cool. He's also cute for what it's worth. I mean, he's terrifying. It's kind of cute, little guy, you know. Anyway, what's next? Urabrask's Anointer is next. This is not a great looking card, but it's all the way sort of up here. This is like that 7th card we've talked about. And there's a reason for that. It's 4 mana, 3 and a red for a 4/2 artifact creature, Phyrexian wizard. And when it ETBs, it deals X damage to any target, where X is the number of permanents you control with oil counters on them. I'm from the south, so I say oil. Sorry about that. Oil counters. I wish that this was dealt damage equal to the number of oil counters on permanents you own, or something like that, or permanents you control. I want it to deal damage equal to the number of oil counters. See, it's hard for me to say. But no, it's just the number of permanents with oil counters, and it doesn't have an oil counter either. Like, it'd be great if it did at least 1 damage, but it's not, it doesn't do that. So you got to set this up a little bit, but I feel like if it shocks something when it ETBs, then you probably got enough value out of it. You probably did okay. But is that really easy to do in Limited? Is it easy to play an oil guy on turn 2, an oil guy on turn 3, into this on turn 4? I'm not sure how easy that is, really. So I don't know how much I like it, but I will say it's 4 power body stapled to removal, so you probably want to at least think about it in Limited. You know what I mean? But let's move on to Noxious Assault, man. We got a couple of good looking Toxic cards in a row here. This, again, I don't think is Standard playable, but it is cusp. It really, if you're going to make green-white Toxic, I'm interested to try 1 copy of this card in the deck. I'm pretty sure it ends up getting cut, but like, this actually kind of reads okay. This is 5 mana, 3 and 2 green for a sorcery. Creatures you control get +2/+2 till end of turn. Whenever a creature blocks this turn, its controller gets a poison counter. So it's not too hard to envision a situation by the time you have 5 mana where your opponent has like 6 poison counters, 7 poison counters, or something like that. It shouldn't be too hard, right? So you're basically putting them in a situation where if the spell resolves, you win the game. It's 5 mana, which is a lot for a Standard deck, especially for an effect like this, just overrun, you know. But this could win the game without you even having to any poison on them whatsoever, you know? Like, you only got like 2 poison on them in your poison deck because it's been a rough game, you know? But you do have like 3 or 4 dudes on the table. Suddenly this becomes pretty good. I mean, it's sorcery speed. They see it coming. They know your dudes are big when they swing in, but like, it could still help you punch through. It could. But mostly they get poison counters whether they block or not. Like, that seems like it could probably win a game or 2, and it definitely will in Limited. This will win games in Limited all day. But I'm interested. I'm interested to try like 1 or 2 copies of this in like the green-white Standard Toxic deck. Yeah, overrun for poison. People are calling it overrun. Yeah, I mean, basically, it feels like an overrun. But I won't say like straight up better than overrun, but like, depending on the game state, man, this actually looks pretty okay to me, but I think it's just barely not Standard playable with that price tag. But We'll move on to Incisor Glider. If you don't like teeth, this one's going to really freak you out. You think it's creepy now? You should see how it eats. It's flavor text. This is such a weird looking card, dude. Incisor Glider is 2 mana. Why? Why is it teeth? They're robots. The Phyrexians are robots. Why teeth? I don't get it. Anyway, 2 mana. 1 and a white for a 1/3 artifact creature Phyrexian construct with flying. It has corrupted. So whenever it attacks, if the opponent has 3 or more poison counters, creatures you control get +1/+1 till end of turn. This is actually kind of neat. Yeah, you're right. They're biological too, but they really specced into teeth on the evolutionary chain, and I don't know why. I'm sure it's meant to, because they eat, they devour, so they have lots of teeth. Okay, I get what you're saying. Still freaky. Anyway. This doesn't look too bad. I mean, a 1 mana 1/3 flyer is nothing to write home about, but it is an artifact creature that matters for a deck or two here and there. But really, the green-white poison deck, I like the way it's shaping up. Like the real green-white poison standard deck looks somewhat budget, which is good. It's good to have a budget option. And I'm not 100% convinced this makes the cut. We'll have to see what else we get, what other good strong 2-drops we have. But one thing I like about that deck is that it appears as though they're trying to do this thing where you can win off poison, or if that's not the game plan, or if it's not working out or whatever, you can win off of combat damage. And I really like that. Like, I think it's a really cool thing to do with this mechanic. Hopefully it's not too pushed or anything, because, you know, the whole problem, like the whole thing with infect and poison counters and stuff, is that the creatures tend to be understated for their mana cost, or they don't have a whole lot of other abilities. It's just like, you're doing poison. Your opponent's life total is effectively cut in half. So you don't get to have amazing creatures, you know? And I feel like they're kind of doing the same thing with, like, this is not an amazing creature, but the fact that you can just get straight up aggressive and give all your dudes an anthem effect once your opponent has 3 poison counters. Like, okay, I'm not trying to get you to 10 poison counters. I'm trying to get you to 3 so that all my dudes get an anthem effect. And this is probably going to be one of the few flying creatures in the Toxic deck in Standard. So that probably matters too. I don't know. I think it's cool. I think it's a really freaky looking card, and if I ever play this in paper, I'm probably going to get someone to do an alternate art and send it in to somebody. Could you draw something else on this? But just make this Ornithopter, a 1/3 Ornithopter. That'd be fun. But despite how freaky the card looks, actually this is actually pretty good. Pretty good. I mean, again, we might have better 2-drops for Toxic decks, but it's really close. It's really, really close for me. Now we're going to look at a piece of removal that's probably in the wrong place on this list. Because I try to go in ascending order, right? I try to go by like, oh, this card is slightly better than the last card, and so forth and so on. But I think this probably belongs in the strictly limited portion of things. That said, I don't think it's too bad. I don't think it's that bad, man. I was waiting for Lisa Needs Braces. An image from that episode has stuck in my head for 25 years, dude. Like the thing that everyone who's seen it knows what I'm talking about. The like computer simulation of what her teeth are going to look like in whenever, 10 years or whatever. Like one of them ends up going through her upper jaw, and like, it's that image, dude. That image is one of the freakiest things I've ever seen. So thanks for reminding me. Appreciate it. Tamiyo's Immobilizer. Let's talk about this. It's 4 mana, 3 and a blue for an artifact that enters the battlefield with 4 oil counters on it. I said it right. Tap, remove an oil counter from Tamiyo's Immobilizer. Tap target artifact or creature. So this is not Icy Manipulator. Like, not even close. It doesn't tap lands. Like, I have to pay actual blue mana for it. Like, I can't just pay any color mana for my Icy. I have to pay blue mana for this, and it doesn't tap lands? Come on. I guess that Wizards has just decided that tapping lands is annoying. It is. The best thing that Icy Manipulator did was tap lands. Bold take, man. But often it was basically like a removal spell. It was a 4 mana, tap one of your mana every turn to tap to keep a creature tapped down. Is basically what Icy often was. But there were a lot of game states where Icy tapped down a land and it mattered. It was basically a Rashad Port, you know. This does not do that, and I hate it. But it does get oil counters. Oil counters matter. There was the southern pronunciation. I'm not watching myself. I'm going to do it wrong. But yeah. This only taps something down 4 turns, basically, which is lame, but you can proliferate to get more oil counters on it. And hopefully, if you can proliferate enough, this is basically just an all-game removal spell that can switch targets. It's pretty good. So I actually don't hate this in Limited. I'm a kind of a fan of blue auras that like keep a creature perma-tapped, you know? Like, I don't mind those in Limited. And this doesn't keep a creature perma-tapped, but it does keep a creature off your back for 4 turns. And I think it's either the worst card ever or just barely worth playing. And I'm on the latter side of that fence. I think it might be just barely worth playing in a mostly blue or like Simic, limited deck that doesn't have access to a lot of good removal, right? So say tires. That I actually say correct. Tires. I don't say tars. I know many people who do say tars, but no, I say tires. Tires is the correct way to say that word. Let's move on to another piece of removal. This is Volt Charge. This is just fine. This is 3 mana, 2 and a red for an instant, 3 damage to a target, proliferate. Fine. It's fine card. Just fine. Just good. It's right sort of in the middle in terms of like the cards we're going to talk about today. We were right in the middle of the list. So I think it's probably about where this belongs. It's just fine. It's a fine card, whatever. I don't know if it's better than some of the stuff we have access to in standard, but if your mono red deck has lots of counters in it, then maybe, but I doubt it. I really do. I just think like in limited, this is one of those things that you choose as many copies of as you can possibly get. This is one of those times to bring up that, remember, in limited, you can play as many copies of a card as you get. Some people don't know that. You can draft 6 copies of this and play it. It's never going to happen. People won't pass it to you. But if you get 5 of these in your sealed pool, and I've seen things like that happen, if you get 5 of these in your sealed pool, you can play all 5 of them, and you should. So just keep that in mind. But let's move on, because Volt Charge is not a very interesting card. It's just a good card. Just fine. Decent magic card, So Unnatural Restoration is next. I like this card. It's like a Nature Sphere, but it's just better, I think that's the name of the card I'm thinking of. 2 mana, 1 and a red for a sorcery. Return target permanent from your graveyard to your hand. Proliferate. Fine. Just a fine. Anytime I see a green card, it doesn't have to be green, but it points if it's green, that can get a Shigeki back from my graveyard, I look at it. And this proliferates, which might mean something in the Shigeki decks. Put another counter on your Reckoner Bankbuster. Maybe put a counter on a Planeswalker or 2 that you have out. That could work. So proliferate could probably be like actual impactful text on this card. And it's already regrowth. It's not regrowth. Regrowth is any card. This is permanent card. That's a very big difference. But just the fact that it gets Shigeki back in loops, good. It's good. It's fine. I think that it's like potentially in exactly the right deck, like 1 or 2 of, very likely 1 of playable in standard, especially again if you can really pop the proliferate off. And I don't think that could be too hard. So I don't know. It's not great. We're in the section of the video where the section of the list of cards to look at where the cards aren't great, but they're getting a little better. And I think that this is a good example of that. It's not amazing or anything, but there are definitely niche applications for this. Anytime you see 2 mana return permanent, it's fine. That's at least fine. So let's move on to, I think we're getting into decent stuff here. Let's look at Veil of Assimilation. Veil is 2 mana, 1 and a white for an artifact. Whenever it or another artifact enters the battlefield under your control, target creature you control gets +1/+1 and gains vigilance until end of turn. I've waffled back and forth on this card all day because the question is, do the white X artifact decks want this card? Or would they rather have Michiko's Reign of Truth? Or would they rather play both? What does this actually do? Like on turn 2, you have to have played a 1-drop. You have to have played a 1-drop in order to even do this on turn 2. I mean, you can just play it if you want to, but I think it's bad. You really want to get value out of the turn you play it, which means you need to play a 1-drop if it's on curve. If it's not on curve, let's say you play this on turn 5 because you drew it or something, not a whole lot of cards in your hand in your like artifact aggro deck, which is what this goes in. Not a lot of cards in your hand when you top deck this. So, I mean, it does give you a little bit of value that turn. The vigilance is important against Wandering Emperor or whatever. But what you want to do is play this on turn 2, pump a 1-drop, and then on turn 3, drop at least 2 other artifacts. Turn 4, drop 2 artifacts, and then your hand's empty, right? But for the 2 turns that you're getting maximum value out of this, you want to get, multiple creatures vigilance or 1 creature +3/+3, those 2 turns or whatever. You want to do that. And I'm not sure that it's actually super easy to do that, but might not be too hard either. You go Yoshin Frontliner. We also just saw that like 1 mana, 1/2 flyer vigilance guy yesterday, who's an artifact creature. There's Ironwork Apprentice, I think it's called. Just a 1/1 artifact creature that costs 1 mana. And when he dies, he gives his counters to something else. So there's decent kind of hot shot mechanic, right? I think I've already said that, but there's decent 1-drop options in standard for the artifact deck. The thing is, I play blue-white artifacts. I play it for fun all the time. You know, the Urza deck that gives all your artifact creatures +2/+2, and you use like, you know, oh my God, I play the deck all the time. We played this card on stream, and I can't remember the name of it. I do this though, but you use Combat Thresher, and you use the equipment that can copy the creature that crewed it to copy Combat Thresher, and then suddenly you got a 4/3 double striking lifelinker or double striking flyer. That thing. I can't remember the name of this card. Why can't I do it? Somebody will remember and tell me. But in any case, I've been playing that deck for a couple of months. I can't remember the name of that card. It just really bugs me. This should put a +1 counter instead of just +1/+1 till end of turn. Yeah, it's a mech. It is a mech. Hanger mech? Is that right? Something like that. I forget what it's called. It's killing me that I don't remember it. But anyway, I've been playing that deck for a while, and I don't know if this card wants it. I really don't. But I think it's a neat card to think about. I think it's one that... It's one of the first and only cards today that I'll say, like, this we need to test. We absolutely need to test this. The only other cards I've really said that with are, like, a couple of the Toxic things. You know, the Overrun for Toxic. The 2-mana 1/3 flyer for Toxic. I think those are worth testing. This too. Mind Link Mech. Oh my God, thank you. Who did it? Razvael, thank you so much. Somebody finally got it. Mind Link Mech. You win. Thank you, Raz. But yeah, I actually kind of like this card a little bit, but I have apprehensions that it's not actually super good. I really want to try this card out a lot. But we got to move on here to Cacophony Scamp. There's 2 scamps today. Cacophony is the worst of the 2, but I still think this is a decent card, man. This is just 1 red mana for a 1/1 Phyrexian Goblin Warrior. And when it deals combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice it. If you do, proliferate. But when it dies, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. So we've seen a bunch of creatures like this recently. You know, these are 1-mana guys that'll damage equal to the power when they die. They're always fine, you know? Like, I like these dudes. If you can equip it, and obviously in Limited especially, there's a lot of equipments, you know, so there's that. But if you can pump its power like any way at all, then suddenly it's doing real damage when it dies. But even if it only does the 1 damage, like Foot-like Fiend style, you know, then like it's still okay. Like, it's still kind of okay. It sucks that it has to deal combat damage to proliferate. That isn't good because it's probably not going to do that very much. The one thing I could see doing with this, which would actually not be as good as I want it to be, would be to play like this on turn 1, Kumano faces Kakazan on turn 2, get in combat damage, and immediately go to chapter 2 of Kumano and play a creature. Like, play a 1-drop creature so it gets the counter, you know? Like, that's a thing you could do, but of course, hey, that's another thing. Kumano faces Kakazan puts counters on things, so if this gets through for combat damage, it proliferates. I guess if you have other stuff your opponent would rather block, you know, you have bigger creatures swinging, they don't want to block this guy, you know, but if they don't block it, you get to proliferate, so your dudes get bigger, maybe. But that's weird combat math too, because maybe I want to proliferate to make my dudes bigger, but if my opponent blocks one of my other guys, all right, like what I'm saying here is this will go through for combat damage and proliferate, but not before my guy dies to combat damage. You know what I mean? Like, my dude won't get another +1/+1 counter and then survive that interaction. That won't happen. So that would probably be a little bit busted if it could, but I think you know what I'm trying to say here. It's a little slightly complicated, but still, just a 1-mana 1/1 with the final line of text, I think is okay. Probably not better than most of the 1-drops we have in standard, but the proliferate, really interesting text. I like this guy. I don't know if he's going to see any play, but I like the guy. And no haste, get it out of here. Yeah, we do have a 1-drop to look at that does have haste. It's the other scamp, and I think he's way better. I think the other scamp today is way better than this, but this still caught my eye. I'm a sucker for certain lines of text, as you may have noticed by now. But let's look at Expand the Sphere next. This is where we're starting to get into some good stuff. Expand the Sphere. Yeah, that's actually a good point. Somebody said pseudo double strike if you get to pump him or slap some equipment. Yeah, I mean, if you pump him, if you give him a counter, he'll proliferate for technically more combat damage on the next turn, but not that turn. That's another thing, right? If he has counters on him, I want him to do combat damage, proliferate, and thus do more combat damage. But he doesn't. You know, damage is already done. So that's... But you'll do more next. You know, if you put a counter on him, he gets okay. But let's look at Expand the Sphere here. This is 4 mana, 3 and a green for a sorcery. Look at the top 6 cards of your library. Put up to 2 land cards from among them onto the battlefield tapped, the rest of them the bottom of your library in a random order. If you put fewer than 2 lands onto the battlefield this way, proliferate a number of times equal to the difference. Another card that you may have noticed I'm a sucker for, a line of text that I really like, is 4 mana cards that put 2 lands on the battlefield. I always bring up Explosive Vegetation, right? Explosive Vegetation. This isn't as good as Vegetation, but I think this is still probably playable. I do. This is, if it whiffs on one of the lands and you pay, 3 mana for a land. If you pay 4 mana, if you pay 4 mana for no land, you're going to feel terrible. If you pay 4 mana for 1 land, you're going to feel terrible. I'll say that. This can whiff. This can and probably will. 1 out of every X times. But I don't think it's going to whiff that much. I really don't. Especially if you build your deck accordingly. 26, 25, 26 lands. This shouldn't whiff very often. This should get you the 2 lands. In which case it just is Explosive Vegetation. And that's a good Magic card. You play this on 4, slap a land down the next turn. You can afford Titan of Ministry and all these other 7 mana cards in this set. There's a lot in this set. And the last one for that matter. So I kind of really like this card. I'm gonna hate it as soon as it whiffs even once. But I kind of like this just for being, it ramps 2. But if it doesn't ramp 2, there's a couple of interesting things about this card. If it doesn't pay you the full value, it always proliferates. You have to have a way of making that worth it, right? So not only do you have to put a lot of lands in your deck to not whiff, but you also have to have ways of leveraging that proliferate. But a sneaky mode on this card is that it says put up to 2 lands from among them into your hand. So you can put 0 lands in your hand, even if all 6 cards from the top of your library are lands. You can choose to put none in your hand and just proliferate twice, which is also good. Like, there's good versatility on some board states. There's going to be times where you draw this late and like, oh, I've got all the lands I need. I've got 8 lands. I'm fine. I don't need to draw this card. But I can just proliferate twice, and then suddenly I get a buttload of loyalty on my planeswalkers this turn, or whatever. I got 1 planeswalker out. That means I can +2 it this turn and put 2 more counters. It's great, So I kind of like where if this does whiff, it pays you in some other way. It doesn't feel completely horrible. And late in the game, it's got another secret use, and I really like cards like that too. So is actually sweet. Yeah, it's almost modal. Someone in chat, who that is, says it's basically modal. And it kind of is. It basically is. It's got like 4 different modes on it in a way, I like that. I think Expand the Sphere is a fine card. I didn't really love this card when I first read it, and then I got to thinking about it, and I was like, well, it's just Vegetation, but more, it's fine. It's whatever. Why do you hate this card? But what's next here? Sawblade Scamp. We get to look at the other Scamp. I like this dude, man. I like this dude so much. Sawblade Scamp is just 1 red mana for a 1/1 Phyrexian Beast with haste. This one does have haste. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put an oil counter on Scamp. Tap. Remove an oil counter from Scamp. It deals 1 damage to each opponent. I'm into this. This is hold on. What else do we look at today? That. We got 4 more standard cards to look at. Yeah, this is my favorite card of the day. Rustage, what's up? Thanks for your tier 1 sub for 17 months. Everyone's favorite YouTube nerdcore, and I mean that in the best possible way, anime rapper. It's Rustage. If you want some good content, you guys are always asking me to rap more. You guys are, dude, why don't you rap anymore? Go watch Rustage. That's who you want, not me. I promise you, Rustage is the guy you're looking for. Go watch Rustage. But anyway, this card is actually sick looking. I mean, first of all, it's going to attack on turn 1, which is, that's what you want out of your mono red 1-drop. I'm the one who says it, and I can't just watch myself Rustage. I really appreciate you being here, by the way, Rustage. But this actually looks okay, man. Like, if I play this turn 1, there's 2 ways to look at this. I play this turn 1, get in for haste. Turn 2, Kumano faces Kakazan, oil counter, swing. You know what I mean? Or I can play Kumano on turn 1, this on turn 2, put a counter on it, swing 2 haste that turn, and still have a mana open. And then later on in the game, this is still relevant. How many times? Mono red players, how many times has your opponent been at 1? Hundreds? It's at least dozens, you know. I've finished so many games playing mono red where my opponent's at 1 or 2 or something. And a card like this would come in so handy. You can't get in for combat damage anymore. You're just donezo on that front. So this thing can deal the last 2-3 damage. I really like this card. I'm pretty obvious my feelings towards it. Wincube's back, everybody. I have returned. You came back at a good time. We're talking about my favorite card of the day. Not the last card we'll talk about. My favorite card, though. I love this thing, dude. Like, I guess that you could do, it's worse than Thermo Alchemist. And yeah, I love Thermo Alchemist. I just want to build the deck that's like 4 of this, 4 Thermo Alchemist, 4 the other guy, you know, the 2 mana 1/3 that deals the damage whenever you cast a non-creature. I just want to build that deck. But, you know, unlike Thermo Alchemist, this guy can get in a damage on the first turn. He can haste in. He has actual power attached to him. I like this dude, man. I think that Mono Red Burn is going to be like one of the first little meme decks that I try to build, but I feel like it might actually be D's. This card's not bad. Kessig Flame Breather. Thank you, who that is, for the name. It is Flame Breather. But you get 12 guys like this that just tap for damage. It's pretty good, man. That's pretty good. Dare I say battles? I would never battle Rusted. She'll just wipe the floor with me, dude. That's an MC that raps every day of his life. I used to be that. I was that guy 15 years ago. I am far out of practice. I haven't freestyled in, I don't even want to think about it. It's been 5 years. It's been a really long time since I was in practice. And rapping, especially freestyling, is a muscle that you have to train. And if you don't, it atrophies. And I cannot do it anymore, dude. I haven't. It's been a long time, dude. It doesn't untap itself. And that sucks. But oh well. I was referring to the card type and instead got surprise Devlore. Yeah, it's not a battle. You're right. But yeah, it's 100% a muscle. And I am a 92-pound weakling nowadays when it comes to like lyrical ability. I used to be okay. I really did. Then I became a Magic the Gathering YouTuber. I used to slam poetry. I could never freestyle. It's really hard. It's so hard. My slam poetry teammates could spit. Yeah, I know how that is too. Like being one of the weaker sort of freestylers in your group of people that you know, do the thing with. So I totally get that. Yeah. When I was like really into it, one of the dudes that I hung out with all the time, and there was like 4 dudes I hung out with we'd spit and stuff every now and again, but like one of the dudes I hung out with most was, at the time, I was like 23, but this was like a 38-year-old dude from Queens first and the islands before that. And like that dude, man, like he could just go on. That dude could spit for like 5 minutes straight, never repeating himself, never saying a bar that he said before. Like dude, good Lord. Like some people you see freestyle and you're like, well, why am I doing this? This is stupid that I'm doing this because I can't do it. This guy can do it. I can't do it. So like, I don't know. There's a natural sort of God-given talent almost for that kind of thing, but that's not even necessarily true. You have to practice it too, or you're just done. But anyway, that was a very long aside. I felt that way all the time. Yeah, man. You just got to persevere because you love doing it. That's the thing, is you're doing it because you love doing it. Not because like, you know, I am a natural, I'm the best at this. I'm going to be the best. Like I just like doing things because I like to do them. You know what I mean? So anyway, let's move on. And after a while, I think I liked doing Magic YouTube, right? So I just did that rather than, I haven't even made a beat in like 3 years. Which is really sad. I actually like making beats more than anything else music related. So I need to start doing that again. But anyway, Gleeful Demolition is our next card. So that's what you're here for. You're here to talk about me rapping. Gleeful Demolition is just 1 red mana for a sorcery. Destroy target artifact. If you controlled that artifact, create 3 1/1 red Phyrexian goblin creature tokens. This is also great, isn't it? Like, am I nuts? Or is this actually like a really good card? This is the best use for Prosthetic Injector. Remember the first card we looked at? That 1 mana artifact equipment that gives like a creature +0/+2 and toxic. Yeah, just play that and then get 3 guys out of it on turn 2. That's what you do. This is good, man. Like I don't. Am I weird for saying this? I feel like there is some possibility this card sees play in Eternal formats. Is that like a dumb thing to say? Because I think it could. Like, it's 1 mana to destroy an artifact, which is already like a fine rate. Nothing wrong with that rate. But if you blow up a treasure token or a blood token, apparently this is getting a lot of hype in the modern crowd. Good to know, because I hadn't heard anything. I hadn't really heard anything. This plus Dotha Rebirth plus Bushwhacker is going to be a cool modern deck. Ooh. Well, I know what Bushwhacker is. It's Dotha Rebirth. I feel like I should know that. Dotha Rebirth. Whoops. Scryfall, sure. We'll throw in Scryfall. Make sure we get a good-looking version. It's from some Scars. I should know what this is. 1 red mana for sorcery. Additional cost to cast a set. Oh, it's just okay, so it is Dotha Rebirth. Interesting. It just is Dotha Rebirth. But also destroys an artifact. Like you can point it at one of your opponent's artifact and not get 3 guys. But other than that, just is Rebirth. Okay. Huh. Yeah, just a strictly better Dotha. Huh. And you have Bushwhacker. Let's see. Goblin. Why can't I type? Goblin Bushwhacker. Is it with a W whacker? Like, with a W. With an H. Yes, it is with an H. Why can't I talk? What's the Secret Lair one look like? Not great. Yeah, when it enters the battlefield, creatures you control get +1/+1. Yeah, that's basically what I thought it did. That's, So for 3 mana, I get to attack with 2, 4, 6, 8 power? That turn? Pretty good. It's not bad. That's not bad. But, okay, so if I play Bloodtithe Harvester on 2, I can Gleeful Demolition on 3 and still have 2 mana left. Just sacrifice the blood token. And I still have 2 mana for, another Harvester, Infernal Grasp, or whatever. Like, that seems so good, man. It's so good. Yeah, it's better because Destroy and Sacrifice aren't the same thing. Yeah, it's kind of true. That's kind of true. Some things specifically want you to sacrifice, though. You know what I mean? So it's not strictly, but it's close enough. It's close enough. Strictly better is such a, and I know I said the thing, but it's an interesting term. It is. Because whilst it's supposed to mean that it's better in every single situation, sometimes I think people are asking a little too much. You know what I mean? Well, there is a difference between destroy and artifact. Like, there is, or destroy and sacrifice. Some things do specifically want you to sacrifice, and they won't proc this, and it sucks. But for the most part, you can call this a strictly better card. Yeah, Eternal formats have indestructible lands you can cast this on. Yeah. Oh my god. Oh, that's disgusting. See, that's why we need to do these live sometime, because that is a great, and of course it's Brag Demand. Just every time I see a take, it's like freaking Galaxy Brain, like literally. I know I'm making Brag to feel really good here, but just every time I look over in chat and I see a take that I'm like, oh my god, that's it's always Brag, man. So you should brag, Demand. You are Demand. But that is true. Cast this on an indestructible land, and it's 1 mana for 3 guys. You keep your land. It's so good. It's so good. Oh my goodness. Okay, so this is fine. This is even better than I thought it was, and I put it way up here. This is the last uncommon that we're looking at today, because I did think it was the best lower rarity card, and now I guess I'm a little vindicated in that notion. Let's move on to Monument of Perfection here. This is the first rare of the day, and I gotta say, I'm gonna call it weird, but I actually like this. Twinferno with this and Treasure Token just made like 6 guys. Monument to Perfection is just 2 mana. Just 2 mana. For an artifact, you pay 3 mana and you tap it to search your library for a basic, sphere, or locust land card, reveal it, put it in your hand, shuffle it up. For 3 mana, no taps, just 3 mana, Monument to Perfection becomes a 9/9 Phyrexian Construct artifact creature, loses all abilities, and gains Indestructible and Toxic 9. Activate only if there are 9 or more lands with different names among the basic, sphere, and locust lands you control. I kind of like the flavor here. I feel like this is the idea behind like the Phyrexian invasions, and once they get enough different planes under their control, they get ultimate power, and I think that's kind of the flavor of what's going on here. And I kind of like it. 9 lands is a lot. And they have to be different names and stuff. And that's difficult. So I could see playing this in Commander, first of all. I could see playing this in Commander, even though it is still a bit slow. People act like Commander's the slowest format in the world. Games go like an hour or more some of the time. But that doesn't mean that it's a slow format where you're going to get to like turn 25. And it's not necessarily true. But I will say this does look okay in that format, pretty obviously. You know, if nothing else, it searches up lands. It costs a lot of mana to do it, but if you are land screwed, go do it, Chief. And I don't hate that about it either. Obviously, it's a 1-card combo. It goes and gets lands, so you can get lands with different names and have 9 lands and blah, blah. It would be nice if it lets you play an extra land every turn, but that would probably be too much, especially at 2 mana. It would have to cost more than that. At 2 mana, this basically wastes 2 turns in a row if you want to play it and then use it, you know, so that doesn't seem great, but there's going to be decks. There's going to be decks that play this. I really think this is potentially standard playable. Potentially. Not guaranteed, but I think it's possible that, let's say you're in control. This is 2 mana. You can play this on 4 and keep Make Disappear, Infernal Grasp, a number of other counterspells up, Disdainful Stroke for that Sheoldred, whatever. You can play this on 4, have 2 mana up, or you can play this on 5. That's even better. Play this on 5, have 3 mana up, right? So if they don't give you anything to counter or kill or whatever, then at the end of their turn, go get a land. Why not? You can do that at the end of every turn that they don't give you something to do. And that happens a lot. So just the relatively cheap cost to get on the table in the first place. And then just EOT if you got nothing better to do, tap it, and sure, you know. And then if you are able to control the game state for long enough, this probably wins the game. It just probably does, you know. It only costs 3 mana. So you have 9 lands. Like, you definitely have 9 lands if you activate this card. So that means you have 6 more mana left to protect it, or counter spells, or kill that guy so he can get through or whatever, you know. So I don't hate it. I really don't hate this card. I know that it's kind of like silly here. It's kind of a silly looking little thing, but like I think there might be more to it than that. I could see playing a copy of this. It's not legendary either, by the way, but I could see playing a copy of this. The only problem is in the decks that I want to play a copy of this, I'm already playing like a copy of the Celestas. You know what I mean? Like in control decks, I'm playing a copy of Celestas, and I think you get to play one of those 2 cards, but not the other. Just because I mean, you do whatever you want to. It's your life, but you know, you don't have so much room in your control deck for cards like this. And the Celestis is probably just a better card. If you're going to play like an artifact that you have to spend mana on your turn to play, that has these kind of activation costs and stuff, I think Celestis is just better. Gains your life, draws your cards, it's just better, you know. So there is that, but the Celestis is not a win condition, whereas this is. So I'm interested. I'm tentatively interested in the card, you know. Tez does make it cheaper, that's true. Tez makes it 1 mana to activate. Whatever. I just feel like you have to be playing ramp or like some deck that puts out more than 1 land a turn, you know? And like maybe you could pull that off. But even if you don't, if you're just playing like a really slow deck, then like it's possible. But let's move it on, Ski, to Malcator here, yeah. Malcator, Purity Overseer is 3 mana for a 1/1 elephant. It's kind of weird. Who ever heard of a 1/1 elephant? But it's 3 mana, 1, a white and a blue. For a 1/1 legendary Phyrexian elephant wizard. And when it ETBs, you get a 3/3 colorless Phyrexian golem artifact creature token. At the beginning of your end step, if 3 or more artifacts enter the battlefield under your control this turn, create a 3/3 colorless Phyrexian golem artifact creature token. That's kind of neat, you know? It's going to be tough to proc this for that second ability the turn it comes into play, right? But you don't have to. You can just, if you untap with this in play, shouldn't be too hard to make more artifacts. Now, you might be thinking, you probably don't have a lot of cards in your hand. After you play this, maybe you have 4 cards left in your hand, so you get a little bit of value. You get 1 or 2 turns worth of value. But maybe those artifacts cost too much mana to play. You can't play 2 in the same turn. I get that. So I think the best way, well, some of the best ways to play this card are, let's say that I have a Saheeli on the table. 4 mana Planeswalker Saheeli, who -2s to put 2 artifacts onto the table. Look at that. It puts 2 artifacts on the table. So if I were to play Saheeli on 4 and then play this on the next turn and minus Saheeli or whatever, then I would immediately get 6, 7, 8 power or something. Not immediately, I have to wait till end of turn, but you get the 3/3 when this guy comes into play. That's an artifact. You get the 2 1/1s. Those are artifacts. That's 3 artifacts, so you get another 3 power at the end of the turn. That seems like a decent turn. You could also do stuff like Blood Fountain. That makes 2 artifacts. The artifact itself, Blood Fountain, and then a blood token. And then Sanguine Statuette. You know, that the statue's an artifact, the blood token's an artifact. So the problem is with like every card I've named, you have to play bad cards. Except Saheeli's fine. She's not great, but she's fine. Skitterbeam Battalion, that literally creates 3 things. You know, if you have this on the table and play a Skitterbeam, you're guaranteed to get that 3/3. So that's kind of neat too. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that it's neat. I definitely think that it's a 1/1 elephant because, you know, it's 3 mana for 4 power worth of stats in Azorius, and you just never see that, you know. But just based on that, 3 mana, 4 power worth of stats on 2 guys in Azorius, like that's almost playable right there, you know. But if this ever pops off and gives you another 3/3, like you spent 3 mana for 7 power and stats. That's a good deal, no matter who you talk to, you know what I mean? So, yeah, the ETB Golem counts as one of the 3. Exactly. Remember that. I'm trying to get value the turn this comes into play, aside, apart from the value that it gives you, which is worth it. That's worth, because your opponent is prioritized to kill this 1/1. Normally, they wouldn't really want to spend mana killing a 3 mana 1/1. You know what I mean? They want to kill that 3/3, but if they kill the 3/3, you're probably going to get at least another one, if not 2 more. You know, they really want to kill this guy. So I think it's neat. I'm not sure how playable it actually is, and I say that about a lot of cards. Hedging my bets. But in this case, I think this card isn't super powerful, but it is cool. It's cool to think about, and if you play 4 power worth of stats on turn 3, you're probably doing okay. And then the next turn, if you get another 3/3, you're doing great. So I like it. I like the card. But last rare of the day that I know of, we'll reload Mythic Spoiler before we're all done, is Filigree Silex. This is 2 mana for a legendary artifact. You can tap it to put an oil counter on it. You can also tap it and sack it to destroy each non-land permanent with mana value equal to the number of oil counters on Filigree Silex. You can also tap it. There's more. You can tap it and remove 10 oil counters from among permanents you control and sacrifice Silex. Tap it, deal 10 damage to any target. That's neat. Even opponents, just 10 damage right to the face, if that's what you want. This is cool. This is a cool payoff for an oil deck. Note that it's not remove 10 oil counters from it. It's remove 10 oil counters from permanents you control, which is banana pudding. Like, that's pretty good. Like, you know, it's not too... Some things we've seen come into play with 4 oil counters on them, like already, you know what I mean? So I could see this being all right, man. And even if you never, ever tap... let's look at this like a planeswalker, right? That's its ultimate. The tap, remove 10 oil counters, or whatever. That's its ultimate. You'll use it sometimes. It's a cool ability to have. They didn't even have to put that ability on the card, but they did. This, the actual, what this card really actually does is in Eternal formats, it blows up 0 cost things for nothing. There's already a couple cards like that. Somebody has mentioned Ratchet Bomb. Yeah, basic, kind of. And that might matter because it does a little more than some of the other cards like it. Right? You can't tap those to 10 your opponent, you know? So there's that. You can just sit there and put oil counters on it turn after turn. I feel like if you're trying to kill 3, 4, 5 drops, it's a really bad card. Really bad card. But sideboard against either decks with tons of tokens or decks with tons of 1-drops. Card's good. But let's get ready for this raid. Say what's up to Caleb for me. I think he's actually playing Magic. Maybe you want to see someone play some Magic Night, you know? But say what's up to Caleb and all his viewers. Be cool over there. You know how it is. And I will catch you cats later. I'm Dev from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love, be kind, and remember that I will always be waiting for you here in our next adventure together. Good night, everyone.